and they'll be towed and stored at the owner's expense or something, you know, whoever the vehicle. And then I just wanted to confirm, I know the woman who lives at 6-8 spoke very passionately and very well at the last meeting. Mr. Lynch, did you meet with her and discuss the movement of the shed and these 4 parking spaces?
I met with them before the previous meeting, both the owner of 6 and 8, sort of explaining the process. I think this was back in April, early May, just explaining that was my intent, to move the shed. If we were moving down this path, that it would be to relocate the shed and the parking spaces in this location. Mm-hmm. I think at the time I said 2, but we talked after the last meeting, and 4 seemed like it could work. So I think that this matches what I had talked to them about.
Okay. Have they seen this though and responded to it?
Not till tonight, no. I mean, they saw something that had 2, not 4.
Okay.
And I gave that to them as a potential, last spring.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if I may, Joe, if it were to be brought back to 2 spots, could you have them running parallel with Orchard Place and giving them an access to pull in that way, and that would minimize or prevent any potential use by the condo owners?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's no problem.
Well, that could be an option then. All right.
Yeah.
Gary?
I'm good right now. I think we discussed this to death.
Jeff?
Probably right, Gary. No.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate all the changes you've made, so don't misunderstand what I meant.
That being said, I will open it up to the abutters. I will caution you, though, that if you've spoken about this in previous meetings, let's not revisit what we've already revisited. If there's anything new to add or comment on tonight's presentation, be more than happy to hear that. We just ask that you come up to the microphone, give your name and address for the record, please.
Won't be able to get in and out.
Need a mask or like how does it work?
No, you can just come up. You get the podium.
No, it's not a bad deal.
Good evening. I'm Aidan Kilcoyne, resident right here. I mean, I think, as Gary had said already, you've talked about this a lot, but, from my concern, and I guess we have very little say from what I've understood so far, it's up to your discretion, but from my perspective, this is it is a big change, or it's going to be a big change for us, and it's a big intrusion on our privacy in our backyard. So I guess what I would like to understand is who, with the parcel being broken up to begin with, who was responsible for the maintenance of the screening that you're planning on putting in place there?
The owners,
Okay, so now you have multiple owners on
2.
3 owners.
No, there's only 2. It's
2
going to be a
units.
duplex.
But this parcel is going to belong to the new person, correct? Or
Just the parking spots.
Well, no,
Correct?
actually.
no, you're right, you're right.
Some of the trees.
Yeah.
So based on,
That
if we reconfigure the spaces, we could change that around so that the condo possibly retains that strip where the trees are.
It's just that, I mean, again, it's 3 neighbors, very close, it'll be 4 neighbors, including us. And that privacy fence or that screen that you're proposing is, that's important as to be maintained, okay? And then within that, I mean, it looks like, I think it was 6-foot arborvitaes or something. Was that what the plan was for that?
That's correct.
Yes, he was talking 6-foot
I mean,
arborvitaes, which.
okay, so when you're, I know you've heard about this a lot, but 6-foot arborvitaes against a multi-story building that's, closer to the property line nearly than the back of my house. I don't think really 6-foot arborvitae starting off, it really offers what you would call privacy. And I'd just be interested to hear, I know you guys have a lot of experience in this, what other options that you could put in place at this board, at this point right now, if there's anything else available beyond 6 foot.
Well, 6-foot arborvitae's in 5 years are gonna be 12 to 15
Right.
foot.
They grow a foot and a half a year.
Right, they grow
That's why their
extremely fast.
arborvitae's are good. Yeah, it's wonderful to have
Yeah.
perfect screening
And
on
there's
day
no-
one, but it's
And
not.
there's no fence there's no fence that would go higher than the trees will end up being, and they'll end up being much higher, to your point,
Anything over 6 foot, you need a permit for it.
very quickly. And
You're in the business of doing that, I'm sure, at some point, yeah? I think you
No,
probably
it actually
could, you
goes
could
to
work on that.
the building commissioner for
Oh,
that.
something has to go to that, okay.
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, we don't approve that. But, and then you
Everything
don't
else you
want to
got, okay.
plant a tree that's bigger than 6 feet because it's got the best chance of survival to embed and grow.
Yeah, so,
An option is this would be, if you're concerned about neighbors not maintaining the fence, we would build, we could put the fence, we could put the trees on his property. Then he could be responsible for taking care of his own things, if you want to do it that way. If you're worried about neighbors not maintaining, not that you have to really do much maintenance for arborvitae's, but
well, if I can speak to that, I mean, I have no problem taking care of the trees. I think just that piece of property that the trees are on, I'd be happy to take possession of that and look after the trees myself, if it's down to a maintenance issue.
I don't think that's what
No.
he was suggesting. He was suggesting put those across the property line onto your property,
right.
which is a little different thing.
Maintaining them.
Just a touch different, but again, as I said, from a maintenance perspective, if there are going to be trees there, it's a few feet. Either way, again, I'm not looking to reduce the size of the property, like, so, again, I'd be interested to hear some discussion around that.
Well, the only way to do that and have you have responsibility is for them to sit on your property. So I guess.
That's why I'm saying, so give me the property under the trees, if that's going to be the solution, like, if we're divvying it up.
That's not acceptable.
You can't do that. This lot's been sold.
Well-
You can't parcel off that piece.
We're gonna give, the land is gonna go to parcel B, will be going to 6 and 8.
Yep.
And we can't split it up anymore because of setback requirements for that shed, so it has to be at
Oh,
least
very
5
true.
feet off.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you want my personal opinion, these trees are gonna go, arborvitae's do not require a lot of maintenance, and they're gonna grow quickly. I personally, well, I wouldn't want them infringing, if I were you, on my property. There's no if the maintenance is your concern, let them
Oh, it's-
sit on their property.
With respect, it's not really the privacy is really my concern.
Okay.
It's whether what we call it arborvitae's or fence or wall or whatever, it's privacy is the concern. I mean, I really don't mind what it is, And so if we talk about privacy, it needs a certain amount of maintenance to remain that way. And with multiple individuals involved and not knowing who those might be yet, it would just be, to preserve the privacy, it would be nice to get that ruled out at this point, like,
Could there be a landscape easement or something created there so that no one could cut the trees down? And then could we do something like we've done in the past where there's a guarantee, like on Summer Street we did, where the trees had to live like at least 2 or 3 years and there was like a guarantee, something like that, so then that way
If for some reason
no
they
one's allowed
fail.
to, like, well, I guess, so 6 to 8 would have to agree to it with the transfer of the property. That would, and then the condo association would have to, or people would have to agree to it with the transfer to them, so then it would be a matter of all the parties would kind of, right? Am I correct on that? So then that way, nobody could go cut down the trees, and then if there's a guarantee that they'll survive a couple of years,
And
once
that-
they survive a couple of years, they're,
You're
that's-
fine.
They're pretty much it. So,
Those two things, if it can be done, would address the
I
privacy
can say I
issue
have
the best.
23 arborvitae's along the back of my pool, and I planted them in, like, I don't know, I moved into my house in 95, so I think I planted them in 97. And right now, I'm literally looking at them towering over my 6-foot chain link fence, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with those things right now, because I'm afraid one's gonna like tip over or die eventually, because they're so big, so they really are a wall right now.
I mean,
Granted, that's
I
20
don't
something
doubt the ability of the arborvitae's. Again, we're just trying to have a plan now, so, you discuss disputes over parking. This would be an area that, if we're looking at privacy and how that is going to evolve and be preserved, just have that discussion now. That was really it. And you guys have the authority or the
Want to do that?
ability to discuss that and come up with a.
Well, I think
Solution
things are
in the
being presented to you. There's a fixed fence, that's 6 feet, it will never grow. You can't go taller than 6 feet, so that's what you're gonna, that's your guaranteed solid barrier. They're offering that. If you go the arborvitae's, it's 6 feet to start, you know, on center, so there might be a little gap to start, and then, or I don't know, do you stagger them, or how does that work? Does
In
it,
this particular case, we would just put them in a line,
okay, so there would be gaps to start.
yes.
There's 6 feet on center, so
Because they have to grow out. If you put them too close, they'll
what if you
die.
do the staggered?
It's not a lot of room. It could in some of the areas. One of the things I would like to offer, based on the discussion, is to short circuit this, is, well, you could put a condition in there, as you just mentioned, which you did on other projects, is that there'll be a financial surety posted for it, and there'll be required to be lived for 2 years of growing
Okay.
before you would release the financial surety. And they typically would live, you know, usually they die the first year. Street trees and stuff die. They either die or they don't.
Yep.
So you'll have 2 years of growing. That's standard. And actually, the Conservation Commission, I know it's not you guys, but in their regulations, there's 2 growing seasons.
Yep.
And then at that point, they believe things are viable.
What that means, a financial surety, is we'd hold some of the developer's money. So if those trees did die, that money could be used if needed to, if Mr. Lynch didn't pay for them to be replaced, we would use that money to pay for them.
Understood. Okay, I mean, they were my comments on the privacy, and that's all I had to add. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What we can do if parcel B is conveyed to 6 and 8 Orchard is, with regard to the strip where the trees are, we can reserve an easement and the obligation to maintain them that would still remain with the condo. So that way, we would have an assurance of maintenance.
Okay,
Okay.
good, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else? Please come up, give your name and address.
Kathy Hickey, I'm at 14 Baker Street. I'm not in a butter. I'm next to this property.
Yes.
But my concern is, there's a tree line here, and here's the septic going in. I don't want any of that tree line taken down. And there's also a stone wall that's been there before any of us were around. I don't want any of that taken down. If that tree line's taken down from 2 yards away, all I'm gonna see is a big townhouse.
Mr. Buckley?
We certainly won't touch the wall, because the wall is the property line. As
Right.
far as trees, I can't guarantee. Septic systems are typically 10 feet off the property line, so we'll be digging 10 feet off the property line with the system. But, you know, it's not like it's a straight line. You typically go outside of it. So can't guarantee that whatever trees are there would live or will stay down. You know, we'll be at least 10 feet off the property line with the system.
But that's gonna make a huge impact on the neighborhood. Right now, I can't even see that property. Right here, beyond this tree line, it's all green, it's beautiful, and I see all these trees. When that goes in, all I'm gonna see is the big townhouse.
Who owns those trees?
Part of it is
Don't know.
on, part of it is on 16 Baker, part of it is on 18 Baker.
Well, he can't touch anything on,
16.
16.
on
Right.
the Baker parcel.
I don't remember, there's one big tree out there that's unfortunately gonna go.
Yeah, that's the
But
big,
there's no, I remember, we dug the test pits over there, and there's not a lot of, it's not like it's heavy, dense tree growth in that area there. It's mostly kind of light, scrubby stuff. On our side, there might be some trees against the wall, but
Yeah,
it
but
might
you
be
can only,
scrubby stuff, but it's a barrier, and
But
it's
if-
what we wanna keep.
we appreciate that. He can't touch anything that's on other people's property, but if it's on their property, they have the right to do with it as you have the right to do with what's on your property. I know it's not what you want to hear, but we don't have any control over
I can
that.
actually move the system, I can make it at least 13 feet away, because there's a reserve area, so I can make sure that the septic is on the inside and not on the outside. So it could be, the system, I can make sure it's designed so it's 13 feet away. So that will give us more room, hopefully not damage any roots on whatever trees are on our side.
I think that's
Would help.
fair.
What about arborvitae's along that side?
Yeah, for what he's taken down.
Do you want to really plant that close to a septic field? I can see potential damage to the septic over years.
I can, yeah, with the roots. I think
I
it'd
don't
be
know
too
enough
close.
about the root system of that, but I think it's a fair request for the neighborhood, you know,
I think that there's not-
while we're dealing with concessions.
There's not many trees there.
Bill,
I'm sorry.
I didn't know, you were,
Arborvitae's, you know, I think you're right, we would prefer not to plant them that close to a septic system.
Fence?
And
I don't think,
I don't wanna look at a fence either.
Yeah.
well, the question is arborvitae's? If you have a choice, arborvitae's or a fence?
Well, I would prefer the arborvitae's.
Well,
But it sounds like whatever, because the septic system is so close, whatever's there isn't gonna make it. It's already there.
well, he's moving it 10 to 13, which is gonna help. And then I think I just heard you say, Bill, that, you know, there might be one tree that ends up going, but, you know, I don't also think it's fair to put trees up there that ultimately are gonna impact and ruin this new septic system in an attempt to do that. I think it's a fine balance.
And those roots are shallow too, you know, they're shallow roots, so they go out,
They
they
spread.
don't go down like an oak tree
I
or
know.
something like that.
Well, could you, instead of an arborvitae's, could you put something where the root goes down?
You could put trees like that, but then they don't
Spotty.
screen, you know, the complaint is the screening, you know.
As it
you-
grows, the canopy grows up and you have a
Yeah.
big trunk.
Good
Oaks
point.
don't have low vegetation.
Yep.
What about a berm, something like, you know, you see septic systems that go, what if you do something, raise the grade a little bit?
So do a berm, you know, everybody, you know, you talk about a berm, so for every foot you want to go up,
You gotta go out two.
you have to go 2 or 3 feet over. So if you want to put a 3-foot berm, that's like a triangle, that's
Yeah,
6
there
to
are-
9 plus 6 to 9, so it's 12 to 18 feet of taking up the yard to plant something that is 3 feet high. So it's, you know, berms are good if you have a lot of space, which you don't have a lot of space here.
I'd be fine with move it in 13 and do the best to minimize
Yep.
the removal of trees. That's where my head's at.
Yep.
Why don't we say that we'll replace any trees with some type of screening shrub? Any tree over, let's be reasonable, like any tree over like 4 inches,
Okay.
something like that, which I don't think there's many at all out there. So we can replace some trees along there than that.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Anyone else with comments? Please come forward. State your name and address, please, sir.
Bob Foster, 9 Bentwood Street. I'd like to focus on the northeast corner of the property, since that's where, you know, that's the abutter for mine. The fact that there are no arborvitae's there, I take it to mean that this is gonna be left as natural, left as is, this corner?
Yes, and I should have mentioned that. If you look at the plan, you kind of zoom in on it a little bit here. There's some vegetation in there. It's not like it's great stuff, but there are some big bushes in that area. So what we thought is, you know, we would minimize the grading in that area, and that's why I wrote approximate limited clearing, and leave that vacant, and then provide natural screening in that area. So you can see how the trees are all through here. Well, actually here they go out and around, but, so in this area here, in order to build the roadway, driveway, and grading, we'd have to clear at least that much, which would leave the rest of this as natural.
Okay, that's good. But now, you know, then I have the same question that Mr. Kilcoyne did about the maintenance, or the lack of maintenance in this case for that corner. So what's the, you know, who's gonna prevent, or what is gonna prevent the new owners from putting, a shed out there or clearing it or whatever in the future. There are no, you're not planting arborvitae's, which is fine. I
Okay.
get that.
I have a question for you.
Mm.
If that's a concern, because they do have a right to put a shed there, it's their property, would you want them to clear it? I'm just throwing this out here, and put arborvitae's down that let, so if they do put a shed there in the future, because
Do you want to put a,
there's no control, we can't prohibit that, but take it down to the
I guess what I'm saying is that leaving this natural is the preference. I'd rather it be left the way it is. However, there has to be some, if they do clear it and put in something there because they can, then,
this is our chance
What's-
to do it. At that point, there's nothing that can be done. You'd have to work with your neighbors to come to some sort of mutual agreement. Your opportunity to get the arborvitae's as part of the condition of a potential permit is now, as we listen to this.
I liked your, we just discussed it, and I liked your idea of, if you put a condition, Jeff could put it in the docks, and then you can make it a condition that if that area was cleared, then the owners would have to plant screening.
Could we could do that as a future condition?
Yeah, we could extend what we have out there. If there was work to be done, if there was a shed or whatever in that corner.
But you wouldn't have owned it. You won't
No,
own
but
it
he'll
anymore.
pass that on as
This would be a
condition.
condition for the future owner.
It'll have to
Okay.
be sort of a restrictive covenant in the deed.
But it's doable?
Yeah,
that's gonna have to cover around that entire corner, right? Because, the
Yes.
Gallagher's have exactly
Yep.
the same concern.
So we can do it in the future. We can do it as,
Stockade fence on the
Right,
back.
there's already a stockade
Yeah.
fence.
No, there is not.
No.
The stockade fence is
it's right
here.
there.
I get that, we're talking about this corner.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
That's
was
it.
incorrect. I apologize. We can do it as a covenant. That if they do something, they're required to, the owners of the condo would be required to plant arborvitae's. Good?
Okay. Is there anyone else that would care to speak?
Hi, I'm Maureen Kraus, and I live on 9 Baker Street, so I'm not an abutter, but I am a homeowner in the historic district and in this neighborhood. And when I look at this plan and the footprint of the building and the amount of pavement, it's in a different scale to everything that's around it. And, they've made their pitch, and we've talked about the cul-de-sac and all of that, but I would just ask you, as the planning board, to be thoughtful about these projects, because if these variances are allowed and granted, you're just gonna see more of this type of construction that's in a different scale to what's around it, and that's gonna be our town. And from my house, if I draw a circle within a half-mile radius, there's a lot of this construction that has come up in the last couple of years. So I'm just saying, you're the planning board, and that's what we're gonna have.
Well, and appreciate you sharing that with us. The quandary or the situation that we're in is by right, they could do this and build a full cul-de-sac. And
Right, I think, with that, there've been a lot of discussions in these meetings and outside of these meetings about, the property line and the septic and what's the structure and all of those things. So there have been some discussions, and, ultimately, you are the planning board, and you're granting, it's up to you to,
but I'm trying to share with you that if we don't grant this permit by right, without any say of this planning board, Mr. Lynch can do the road and do a huge cul-de-sac. We cannot stop it. He has he has that right to do that. It's called a by right. So we can either work with them to put arborvitae's in and move the shed and do the parking spaces for 6 and 8, they can go ahead by right and do something that's even a bigger scale than you're seeing here.
Okay, so maybe it's a bigger comment. And it's maybe for this type of construction, and I know it's been called a subdivision. I don't really call it a subdivision. It's putting, two houses on one lot. I mean, maybe that's something that the town needs to look at. Maybe that needs different setbacks than are required now. I mean, it's just, I'm just saying, like, look around town. If this is what you want to see, like, how many of these do you want to see in the next 10 years?
I completely
So
understand, but that would
that's
be
what
a
I'm saying.
zoning change. That's not within our purview, ma'am. I don't want you
Okay.
to think that what you're saying is falling on deaf ears, but what you're asking us for, that would be a rezoning. There's a zoning board for that. And this would be allowed by right, the big one. So we can only make a decision based on the options available to us. And unfortunately, we're kind of a bit in a quandary.
Okay. But to truly answer her comment, Tracy, this board has worked long and hard for many, many years, Maureen, with many of the developers in this community to try to minimize impact. We cannot stop the progress. If you own a piece of land and you have the right to develop it, we make sure that it fits the criteria that is in place at the time in the town.
Right, and I think if this was a single-family house, you wouldn't have seen the objection that, we've seen in the last however many meetings. There'd be a different scale to the building, a different amount of pavement, so it's just something to just keep in mind, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Patricia Selby. I am actually speaking on behalf of the Historic District Commission, not as an abutter, although I do live at 13 Baker and can see all of this. Surprisingly, we can all see each other quite well because we have very big open yards. And I absolutely feel for what Mrs. Kraus is saying. I'm completely in agreement that this is a very difficult situation. What we are not in agreement on, and I believe Paige had a conversation with Mr. Costello today, yes. We spent an hour, Mr. Barrett, our architect, who really understands your drawings way better than I do, and I, with Mr. Costello, going over the fact that somehow, when you all asked your questions to him, rightfully, can we do this? Can we do that? What does this mean? What does that mean? And he answered, no one ever mentioned to him when you said they want to do a by right subdivision under the subdivision bylaw, under the subdivision control laws. No one ever told him this existing fountain was there and that the road that would be built over it would cover a structure subject to the historic district.
What structure is it covering?
This fountain.
The road is covering the fountain?
Yes, their subdivision, if they popped up, their subdivision goes right on top of the fountain. As a matter of fact, 5 feet of
This does?
loam and seed is what Bill calls it, goes right over top of the fountain. There is no way for them to do an as-right construction with a roadway without covering something in the historic district. The irony there is that it puts our two portions, your board and our commission, at odds with each other because you're stuck saying, well, are they asking for this as of right? And they didn't actually. They didn't submit approval not required. What they submitted was a definitive plan. Those are not the same thing. And I've had to spend a whole lot of time understanding how this circle went into effect like this. They have not yet proven to your board, not my business because I'm historic district, but they have not yet proven to your board they can build this because what they've shown, not under an approval not required, but under a definitive plan, was that they would cover up something in the historic district. They have to come to us for that. And unfortunately, what happens in historic districts all over this state, and poor Mr. Costello was like, please do not put me in this situation, is the moment they bring in the first bucket load of dirt, we file something with the Land Use Board of Appeals and we say, stop. Right now, don't put a single piece of dirt on that structure. And then the town is spending money and tying this up in legal affairs for years and years and years until we find out how big of a fountain do you need to be before you're an architectural, what do they call it, landscape architecture. Well, the fountain is, and nobody disputes, for instance, if this stockade fence were even 1 inch over the line within the historic district, they'd have to come to us to have permission to build their fence. If I want to put an arbor on my property, I have to come to us and then not vote on myself to put an arbor on my property because it can be seen.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because we discussed not the fountain in specific, but
Right.
the historic district, and there, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree. But what I'd like is, what was the opinion of our town council? Because that's going to sway my vote, if we vote tonight or whenever, the most.
Well, I hate to speak for him, but you just said agree to disagree, and that's the way he summarized the hour-plus long conversation with Mrs. Selby and the other member. He said we basically agreed to disagree because they have a certain position and he doesn't necessarily agree with it.
We agreed to disagree about the roadway versus a driveway. He did not make that statement
Excuse
about the
me.
fountain.
Please,
Please.
you need to direct your questions
I just
to the
want to give
board.
an answer. So basically, it was very clear to me, Pat Costello, I mean, he spent a lot of time on this already. He said the fountain is a moot point. The planning board can do a full build exercise. It's in your discretion of how to make a decision. The full build exercise doesn't create jurisdiction, and the planning board approved plan is what determines jurisdiction. So, I mean, he just, I mean, we spent a fair amount of time discussing it, and he just does not think there's any problem with the planning board if they proceeded with a waiver plan or the other way. So he basically does not agree with the Historic District Commission, and that's it. He's not even convinced that that fountain itself would be a landscape feature, but he admitted he did not fully study that, but he doesn't think it's triggered because it's not going to be disturbed under this. And if the planning board is comfortable with the exercise, I mean, you get to decide the exercise. So it's your discretion.
Okay, and if I may ask one question, Mr. Buckley. The current lot line is, I believe, to the right of where it states Lot 1B.
That's right, yes.
So everything from that line to the left is owned by Mr. Lynch,
Yes,
and it is not part of the historical district.
it is part of, that Lot 1B lies within the historical
Okay,
district.
okay.
But historic governs structures.
Right, and the question was the structure.
So I would like to address a couple of things. First, the last part of what Paige said is correct. We agree, and Pat and I are both attorneys, so we sort of were driving Sean nuts with this. We agree that this is a mental exercise, right? This is a, so what would happen if? And it is correct. See, Paige is coming to the end of, well, what's effectively going to happen here? If, in fact, this board, in any way it decides, it reasonably decides, that they could prove an as-of-right subdivision, if this board decides, okay, we are satisfied that you prove that, let's talk about waivers and what's best for the community, because we have to let you build something nobody wants. Let's talk about what would be better, right? And that's when we get into the arborvitae and the stockade fences and all that good stuff. That's fine. What he's saying is, if in fact this board said, prove it, build it, then it's no longer an intellectual conversation. Then the question of whether the fountain would stop it would be at issue. And he is not giving an opinion on whether the fountain is a qualifying piece of landscape architecture because he's never seen it, because no one has taken photos, no one has shown him what it is. He has never been on the site to actually see what that looks like. He hasn't seen whether you can see it from a sidewalk. So we went through the list of questions. Can you see it? All of that stuff.
Is that, I don't mean to interrupt, is that the criteria that you can see it?
Yeah, part of the criteria for any structure is that it can be seen from a public way in the historic district. And you can't count trees as not being able to see it. It
Okay.
can't be something you can remove.
I mean, we can get into this debate all night, but I've been on site and I can't see it from a public way.
I can see it, and we've taken photos from public ways. So it is visible, it's just not,
Okay.
it's not a huge fountain bubbling up,
Okay.
which is why you're not seeing
I
it.
think, we understand the position of the historic district, and we respect it. I don't think we need to rehash this like we did at our last meeting. We know their position, we know where town council has weighed in. I think we should move the discussion on.
Okay.
Because while we appreciate that you're an attorney and you're representing the historic district, we have town council, and that's who we have to take.
And we have
our-
town council, and he actually said, now I'm sitting here between two of my different boards who both have a problem and both have an issue, and both of them legitimately have a question that can only be answered if we took it to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
Well, and that's your right, and you said something at the beginning that I will be honest was very off-putting. It's like we could end up spending money on attorneys.
And we don't want to.
But here's the thing, we don't want to either.
Right.
And we are making a decision based on the rules that we have to follow. If you folks opt to do that, then that decision to spend town dollars on a legal or whatever you want to call it situation, that will be on the historical. That will not be on the planning board.
Well,
And you can debate it and disagree, but that's my personal opinion. So, we've all been served at our home before. So we've
Sure.
been there.
And we're not,
If that's what you folks want to do, but that
I
came
don't
across very
think that would be-
off-putting
that
and
would
very,
not-
can you please let me finish? That came across very off-putting and very threatening, which from a fellow board member in town is disappointing to see.
okay, I hear you, and I understand that it came across that way. I apologize if you took it that way. What I am saying is, we are both in need of understanding what the rules are, and so far in these many months of many versions of this plan coming forward, what we have been told is this has nothing to do with the Historic District Commission. And that is actually not true. And so what I am trying to make sure is that the Historic District doesn't get put in a position where we say this is our only choice because we weren't heard. So what I'm asking is that we be heard.
You have been heard. The other gentleman spoke at the last meeting. He actually went very aggressively after Mr. Buckley. You're being heard at this meeting. We understand your position. We don't have to spend 30 minutes discussing it. We respect it. We may not agree with it, but, we've gotten from Pat Costello, from the message from Paige, and we appreciate you can disagree with that and say you heard differently, but I think from this perspective, Ron,
Yeah, no.
we've
And as
heard
long
plenty.
as no other board members have any questions, then I'm going to leave that, and then we'll go back and talk to Pat and figure out what we need to do at this
Okay.
point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lovely, did you have your hand up on?
Well, this is subdivision control, so really the boards that matter in subdivision control, planning board and the Board of Health.
Correct.
As you know. So we would disagree that the fountain is subject to the Historic District bylaw as drafted, and we've offered a solution that saves and protects it. The owner, Mr. Hunt, said that if this goes down and the waivers are granted and 1B is conveyed to him, he plans to restore it and run water to it. So we've offered a solution. So, and also, I've never heard of the Massachusetts Land Use Board of Appeals. I don't think we have one, but
That's okay, let's not go there.
But I appreciate, Mr. Hunt's willingness, because right now it's just sitting dormant. So from both a historical and a planning board and a town resident perspective, I think it would, not that I can see the fountain, but agree to disagree, it'll be nice to have it running again.
No, agreed. And from the original plan that came in, and this may or may not be a gray area that was just discussed, they did meet the criteria.
Yep.
What they're presenting here is a much improved, very modified, a lot of concessions made. Mr. Hunt ends up with no issues with the septic system, a larger parcel of land, a fountain on it. 6 and 8 Orchard Place end up with parking, shed relocation. the road is gonna be completely taken care of by the condo association.
And it's going to be repaired as part of the
Right,
development
fully restored.
and then maintained.
I don't see a problem, honestly, I do not see a problem.
It's a welcome alternative.
I have a question just for the record about the 6 to 8 Orchard Place parking spaces. Are you guys here? Is anyone from 6 to 8 here? No? Because I just would hesitate, I mean, I don't know,
I would hesitate.
hesitate to take away 4 spaces,
Oh, no, I wasn't gonna go there.
you know, and then making them parallel. I wouldn't want a parallel, is that what you guys were talking about, like parallel parking?
No, it
So
would be pulling in this way, I believe.
You can get two
side by
spots,
side.
there's, just correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, how deep is that, 19?
Like they would go in this way,
18.
Paige. 1, 2, side by side.
So if
So
it's
that would be
18,
at the-
right, if it's 18 feet wide, split it in half, you get two 8-foot parking spots, which is a standard parking spot,
Yeah.
by the 18-foot deep. Half of this becomes grass, half of it stays as parking, and then the access would come in off of Orchard Place. I think that is far better than having it access the way it's shown on the
Where does
plan.
the shed go in that?
The shed can still stay right there, Gary.
I think it would have to move.
Wait,
You're saying reducing
can
the
you draw,
amount
can you
to,
draw the picture?
reducing the amount to 2 spaces rather than 4?
Right,
Or
Bill, can you
for
do anything
two
quickly to
tandem.
modify?
But I also, part of me, I want, before this gets finalized, I want the owners of 6
Oh,
and 8
agreed,
to
agreed.
weigh in with what they preferred. I personally don't like this one, but they may like it.
To address not only not parking there, but they're really not supposed to park on the hammerhead, because that's for a public safety
Right,
turnaround.
right.
Yeah.
And those may have to be, whether it's paint on the ground and signs, but clearly called out in the documents.
Right.
That's that's a fire lane over there.
So what I was referring to, I'll just go up and point
Yeah.
on the map, make it easy.
Where would the shed go, Ron?
The shed could stay right where it is, Tracy. If they had access that came in like this became 2 parking spaces divided in the middle here.
Oh,
This could go back to being grass. And
How do you get out?
back out.
Yeah, but how?
They have to shuffle vehicles.
Okay. That's why you're the engineer.
Well, you could back out, you're right, it just would be, I think it would be
It
awkward.
would be a tight
Yep.
back out.
I didn't think about that.
I mean, I'd like to think that maybe there's a way to, I mean, with signage or some, I mean, again, you would hope that good neighbors, I mean, I know things have gotten crazy in the world and everybody's fighting, and you see that on TikTok all the time, but hopefully
That's what you think.
it doesn't end up like that, or maybe I see that.
I'll have to check it out.
All the neighbors fighting, but, again, I would, and I don't, they're not here to say, but I would just think 4 spaces over 2.
I think honestly, I don't think I think we're fine either way.
Yeah.
I think it'd be their decision, in my personal.
Yeah, and if 6 to 8 wanted it a different way, I think we'd all agree
Yeah.
that whatever they want that's safe and reasonable is fine.
Right.
Yeah, I just would hate to take away parking that's probably desperately needed.
Right.
If you want to, because I'm probably, if we met with them, they're probably not even sure what they want. You know what I mean? Because, I look at plans all day, so I can halfway visualize what's gonna happen, but a lot of people can look at the plan and really know what they're looking at. So perhaps a condition that says, because really you're approving the road. This is not the road, this would be parking off the side of the road, so perhaps a condition, Paige, come up with the wording, or Gabby, that says that we will supply no more than 4 spaces in this general location to be, it could be modified, if, they might love this, but it could be modified that, and I think the point will probably come when it's built, or the road is at gravel, or it's at, at the gravel
when they
point.
can
Now,
actually
now they'd
vision
be able to go out there and go,
Yeah.
oh, all right, yeah, I can pull in there, oh, okay, or maybe they would like what Ron described, or maybe they would want angle parking, and they wouldn't mind backing out and pulling into the hammerhead and pulling out. I don't know, but, as long as they're in that same general area, I don't think Jeff will have written the condo docs by that time, because we're only gonna be at gravel, we won't even have a building permit. And I think that would allow you and us some flexibility and the neighbors on how to put it there. So no less than 2, but no more than 4 in that general area.
And just to clarify, my understanding is that the shed and those spaces are really all related to 8 Orchard Place, which is the unit closest to this project.
Right.
And that 6 parks on the other side.
6 has their
I
own
believe
parking,
so,
I
yeah.
do believe, yes.
Oh,
So this would be the Sampsons
Yeah,
as
that's what I
you,
was saying, 2 would
oh,
suffice.
okay, so that could change things.
I stand corrected.
Yeah,
I was
so
thinking
2
that was
could be
all their
sufficient.
parking.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's actually, if you look at the plot plan, there's a little cut in right
Oh,
there.
yeah, right there.
And that's a garage in the back.
Right.
Oh,
Driveway.
It goes off the side. We didn't go all the way.
so,
right
but
up.
should we keep it general to 6 to 8 though for the condition, just in case? Or do we restrict it to 8?
No, I would do it, 8 is the one right now that will be losing the parking spots.
Even though they're,
Does 6 lose any? Joe, did you make any commitments to 6?
No, I had met with Ellen, and then Jean was at the meeting, Jean Cameron. But mostly it was to show Ellen what I was proposing in terms of the shed, and just, once again, it was, this is what I'm proposing. Do you guys have any ideas? They didn't have anything in specific, but it was generally to show where I could relocate the spaces
Yep.
and the shed.
yeah. And again, so the Sampsons are not losing anything.
No, we're bringing them to what they currently have is 2 deeded spaces,
Yep.
and then the shed just,
Oh, I mean,
The
I think
right.
I'm talking about the Camerons.
yeah.
The Camerons are
Camerons
not
are
being,
fine.
okay, okay.
I think we can get something like that in writing, that eventually it would be settled mutually agreeable,
Yep.
In that same
No less
area.
than 2, no more than 4.
right?
Yeah.
Moving the shed.
Time being.
Yep.
I think we can get that in writing. I'd like to move this along.
Yeah.
We beat this to death.
I would as well.
Yeah, I guess so.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion to approve
With conditions?
with conditions as stated.
All right, so let me go through a few of them. Gabby, can you help out if you haven't? I've just been writing through this. So I just made note of the 6-foot stockade fence along 18 Baker, and the street trees would be substituted. And then the arborvitaes would be planted along the 6 foot on center, 6 feet tall, instead of the street trees, and that would be along whatever that is. What is that, the northwest property line? Limbing of trees on the right side of Orchard Place, a riprap swale. The new house owners would have to handle the maintenance of Orchard Place, including snow plowing. The condo is going to be responsible for maintaining those trees. Oh, let me move that back up there.
Hey, Paige, did
Yeah.
you get that there'll be, if the natural vegetation in the back left corner is taken down for any reason, that arborvitaes will be planted
That's
there?
later.
Okay,
Hold on. I'm going in order of how
Sorry.
it's said. That's okay. So then we're back to maintaining the trees and the performance.
Yeah, surety for 2
Surety, yeah,
years.
surety for 2 years, I get that. And then they're gonna move the septic to 13-foot offset, replace any trees over 4 inches with screening shrubs. There's gonna be a restrictive covenant that requires that if what's that corner that is gonna be undisturbed?
The northeast.
Northeast corner is cleared, then the owners of the condos must continue the arborvitae screening consistent with what's out there now, or would be put out there,
up to the stockade fence,
up to stockade.
or the end of the property, however we
Yeah.
want to word it.
Okay.
well, could we specify the 6-foot arborvitae, 6 feet on center for
Yep.
consistency there?
Yeah, okay. I had a note here about no parking signs, but then
Slash painting.
because we're gonna need something, well, painting is lame, I don't know.
Okay, well, I think we need 2 signs, though. We need the
Hammerhead
hammerhead
and the others, right?
and the, whatever happens with the 2 to 4 parking spaces for 8.
Yeah, so, a
I'm not
combination,
crazy about the
Marcus.
signs, I'm sorry.
Right.
I don't want signs in my front yard either.
no?
No. Leave those
Want
on
painted
Commercial Street, they
pavement?
look like hell. No, thank you.
Well,
You could do it
maybe-
elegantly.
Well, hold on one second. Maybe if it's the parking spaces of 8, we're leaving how they're situated and how many there are to the owners. I would leave what type of signage they would prefer
them.
to the
Yeah,
owners.
that's fine, I agree.
It's a deeded situation. Impossible.
All right, so I won't say anything about, well, we need some sort of, we might need signs on the hammerhead. That's kind of a no, like we.
The hammerhead's fine because it's not backing up, you know, it's gonna be the arborvitae's. I think that's fine, but the parking spaces,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
more
so-
residential
And then the
in
last one I
nature.
had there is about supply no fewer than 2 spaces, no more than 4 spaces in the general location shown on the plan, as agreed by 8 Orchard Place. Something more elegant than that, but, and Gabby, did you?
Anything about the shed? Do we have to say anything about the shed?
That's kind of to be determined.
Well, the same thing, right? Because they're gonna also,
Okay.
you'd allow them to move the shed too, right?
A parking
So-
space in the shed, I think, should be at
Yeah.
the discretion,
Mutual agreement.
yeah.
Shed, okay.
Can you move a shed?
Okay, one thing that Dallin brought up, and I don't know if it's in our purview, is they're having trouble getting the trash truck down there. Is there anything we need to do around that? Is there
I would
anything
think
we
this
can
project
do?
is gonna make it easier to get a
The
trash truck.
reconstruction of the road is gonna be widened a bit.
And it's gonna be
And
fixed.
all of the
Trees
limbs.
trimmed up?
Yep.
Okay,
that are-
And the
that are gonna
pavement will be
restricted
for-
to the
Okay,
trash
I
truck
just
is gonna be
remembered.
cleared for fire. so.
Okay, I just remember that was of concern to her.
Are there any other conditions?
No? No,
And then you should also make a statement as to why you're approving the waivers. Like, you know, why you're choosing to grant waivers. I mean, it's a general statement, but, you know, as opposed to requiring the full build.
Right. Well, the reason for granting the waivers as requested, we feel as a board creates a minimal impact on the community and zero impact on the town, because it will no longer be considered a road to be accepted by the town and maintained by the town. Therefore, there is a benefit to be had.
I have a question on that. So is Orchard Place forever always a private way?
yes.
I'm adding
Private
that, I
way.
just added that in.
Okay, okay.
To make sure, once Ron
Private
said that, I
way
was
in
like, you know, we might
in
wanna.
In perpetuity.
In
Okay, I just want
perpetuity.
to make sure of that.
So basically, you feel that it creates minimal impact on the community with no impact on the town, and why don't, and what are your thoughts about the full build? I mean,
Well, the full build would be wholly inappropriate in this setting. And in particular, to
Abutters.
Mr. Hunt, the immediate abutters would be the most affected parties, without question. And
3 of us.
I could see 5 properties being dramatically affected if they
Yes.
went with a full
There
build.
would be, and there would be a lot more, there would be a lot less impervious surface, which isn't good.
Right, the full build, you end up with a giant cul-de-sac.
Right.
Wider road,
That was me
sidewalks,
channeling
lights.
John Rhodes for drainage.
It's a major impact on the community,
Yeah.
on the neighbors.
On the neighbors.
okay. So you have to vote on the waivers and the decision.
Okay, motion to approve the waivers as described and read into the record,
And to,
as
As-
submitted.
as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Now you gotta do the plan.
Yep. Motion to approve the plan,
Second,
all in favor?
aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Thank you, everyone.
hearing our 12 million requests. You wanna make a motion?
Next year?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Next week?
Yeah, next week.
Adjourn?
Motion to adjourn,
Not tomorrow.
any seconds?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Are we on the agenda?
Oh,
Yes.
Spring Street?
No.
Milt,
No, the Mill Street Preserve is Mr. Lynch.
Oh, no, that's continued for the next meeting, because this was continuing.
Oh, sorry.
You guys are supposed to check in, I'm sorry.